Hey everyone! I wanted to do this video and talk a little bit about the misconception, I guess, of what mental illness looks like. Because I think there is this misconception out there that, people with mental illness present or, physically look a certain way. Like, I think to the layman, and by layman I mean people that don't have mental illness, I think they have this idea that people with mental illness are just crazy and they look crazy, that they may be incoherent or they can't, speak correctly, or that they're disheveled or unkempt, in their physical appearance. And I don't know if that's because of the media or the way that, mental illness is portrayed in a lot of movies and things like that. And certainly there are some people that have severe mental illness that do look a certain way, but I think for the most part, you can't say, oh, that person does or doesn't have a mental illness because they look like that, and it kind of got me to thinking about it because I got a comment from one of my videos and it said something like, you don't look like you have a mental illness, you look more normal than most people I know, or something like that. And it's like, you can't judge a book by its cover. Just because I may look normal, that does not mean that I'm not dealing internally with, emotional turmoil or, mental issues that are bothering me. And, just in my personal case, like, in my videos, I tend to make videos most of the time when I'm doing well. So there's a reason that I look well, because I'm on medication. And, I don't tend to make videos when I'm like suicidal and stuff, because I don't really want to put a camera in front of my face when I'm crying my eyes out and like, oh, I want to kill myself, like that's just not what I want to do. I have made some videos where I have been manic, and I think people can tell that I am manic in those videos, but again, you kind of have to know the person, because you have to know what their baseline personality is like before you can judge whether that's like a deviation from what they're normally like. Because some people are normally like hyper and talkative and stuff like that, just that's their personality. So that wouldn't necessarily be manic, but for a person like me that's not normally like that, that is like a deviation from what I am normally like. And I think depression is harder for people to tell because, you may be able to articulate it quite well. You may be able to say, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling suicidal, etc., etc. But does that mean that what you're feeling inside is any less because you don't look suicidal? No. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention, is that I actually just found out today that a guy that my husband worked with and was friends with committed suicide. And he had a wife and a small child, and my husband was telling me how, he never knew anything was wrong, that, again, he seemed normal on the outside. But like I say, just because somebody looks a certain way, that doesn't mean that they're not struggling and that they don't have all these personal issues going on that other people don't know about. And obviously, this guy had a lot of problems if he took his own life. And I think that's a case, when people attempt suicide or are really, depressed and stuff, people come back later that they know and say, oh, I didn't know anything was wrong. So, people don't always necessarily talk about it or present in a certain way so that people really know what's going on with them. So I don't know. I guess I just want to say again, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, because you don't know what somebody is going through. Even if they don't have a mental illness, you don't know what someone's going through personally in their, you know, mind, unless they tell you those things. So, yeah, you know, just be aware of that, people. And just because a person may look normal, that doesn't mean that they're not struggling with a mental illness, or, you know, with problems.